My name is Hans Læssøe, and for this special edition of the Risk Awareness Week, focusing on supporting Ukraine, I'll be talking about effective risk reporting. My agenda for doing so is covered in a number of points. Let's face the fact that reporting is part of largely any process that you have in the company. And there's also a traditional way of doing risk reporting, but quite often it doesn't work. To remedy that, I'll be looking into some of the criteria for effectiveness of reporting. What will it take to make a good risk reporting and an effective one? Or what are the prerequisites for generating such a report, and come up with some examples. Then I'll be talking a little bit how to implement effective risk reporting. But the world doesn't stop there, because I will also touch upon how to eliminate enterprise risk reporting, or not enterprise, but risk reporting altogether. Now, as I stated, reporting is largely the part of any process. When you're making a strategic plan, you come up with a strategic report or something else that you present to the executives or the board of directors that they can discuss. When you make a budget, you come up with a financial survey and a financial reporting that people on a management and board can address. Investment planning would come up with a survey, sales and operation plannings come up with a sales plan on supply chain, and some reporting related to that and what that entails. Auditing naturally comes out with an audit report. That could be short reports, a long report. How is the state of things? HR processes of staffing reports. There are all kinds of those. So it only comes natural that risk management will also need to lead to some kind of reporting as well. And it does. In many companies, most companies, I guess pretty much all companies, there is a reporting on risk management. But quite often it doesn't work. And there's a number of reasons for that in my experience. The very first one of them is that it often tends to focus on the efforts of risk management. We've been working so hard, we're so good, we're so valuable to the company, but basically management really don't care. They have already decided to have you as a team, to have a risk management process, to have a team and have you put in there. They don't need to be confirmed about that. And even worse, if you're unable to show the value, they would hate to be told that the decision of having you there is wrong. So forget about that one. It's also quite common, focused on individual risks, looking at what they are. But then again, most of these material risks, there could be some nobody knows about, but the material risks, they are known. Management are aware of them. And whatever you tell them is not providing valuable new insights. When it really goes bad, when it really is done wrong, the risk management team comes to management, to the executive management, even the board, asks them, what are your key risks? Put them into a report and say, these are your key risks. It gives them no new insights. Then it's based on the notion of minimizing risk. To very many companies, to many risk managers and many risk consultancies, risks are bad, they're to be avoided, to be minimized. That's not the world of management. Management is well aware that there is no such thing as not taking risks. So to them, risk-taking is a matter of optimizing risk-taking rather than minimizing. That is not shown, that is not captured anywhere in most of the traditional risk management reports. Then there's a point of data. Quantitative data are by and large not leveraged, at least when it comes to some of the more tricky risks to address. Fact-based analytics is seen as cumbersome and avoided at all costs, replaced by human assessments. But human assessments are biased, and they are often very, very wrong. Doug Hubbard have written excellent books on this. The Failure of Risk Management in the second edition is just one of them, which is highly recommended. But it's completely ignored. Also, looking at individual risks, there are no consideration about the ranges. Any risk can come up with a small impact or a high impact, or medium impact, or an extreme impact in some cases. There are no consideration of domino effects. There are no consideration of risk interdependencies, which means that the perspective of risk is so simplified that it's actually useless. And a part of that is also that it's only focused on risks. There's no consideration of levers, uncertainties, opportunities, all the good things that also will happen, which means that when you look at the risk report, you will get a doom and gloom picture of how bad things can go when nothing, absolutely nothing, goes right. And then there's no consolidation. When you have single point estimates on individual risks on different scales, and they are all biased and assessed qualitatively, you cannot consolidate them. But the problem is management really, really wishes to know whether they're actually taking on too much risk or not enough risk. And being the risk manager, being the reporter of risk management, of risk in the company, you're not telling them. That's not fair, because as long as they don't know how fast they're driving, they dare not drive any faster, or very often would not dare to drive any faster, when in fact they could. I've seen examples of this where the risk management reporting, once it was consolidated, once it got an overview of what the real risks were and the uncertainty range of the company, what it really was, we found that we could take on a lot more risks. Now, there are two criteria for the effectiveness of reporting. And the first one is very, very much the first and most important one. It has to deliver true value for management. Now, this may seem absolutely obvious, but for some other reason, it's still not deployed in many companies. And the first part of being valued to management is it has to be performance focused. Management and boards do not really care about risks. They care about performance. They care about meeting or exceeding targets. They care about progress and leadership. They don't care about risks. In fact, one executive once told me that whenever you talk about risks, I hear excuses. So focus on performance. Leverage the performance criteria that you have. If you have a growth performance target, then focus on what are the risks that you may or may not achieve growth. Look at the future. High glossing the rearview mirror and looking at what has happened, it's not really that valuable. Bring in factual insights. Now, top managements are generalists, and they are hired to be generalists, and are hired to have an overview. All of the factual details are amongst the middle managers and the specialists throughout the company. That is new insights to management if you tell them. Bring that on. And put your foot on the table, or rather put your neck in it. Bring recommendations. Tell them, based on all the things that you've experienced throughout the company, what will it take to do this better? Then support decision-making. You're not going to make decision-making, but you can support it. And that way you can drive competitive advantage for the company, as long as you do this better than your competitors. Now, the second part of it is more like an efficiency, more than effectively actually, but it's about how to prepare the report. You have data. Trust me. Doug Hubbard has shown it also in How to Measure Anything, an excellent book, highly recommended. Leverage the valid data you have. They will give you more insights and more accuracy than any biased assessment you can ever come up with. You can also leverage the employee and specialist organization you have throughout the company. Management is not hired to know everything. They are hired to act on anything or what is presented to them. And then, as a matter of efficiency, leverage systematic approaches. Don't try to invent the wheel every time you have a report. Have a process of doing this. Make sure you know how to do it, and tailor the tools and the templates and the processes and steps you take to do this efficiently. There are two benefits to this. One is that it's easier for you as a risk function to generate the report and gather the data and do the stuff. But it's also easier for those you work with to understand what you're doing and to understand, oh, that's the same as what we did last time. And when you have tailored tools and tailored templates, you also get management to look at, oh, we've seen this before. We've seen that kind of things before. So now we can focus on the content rather than the layout or whatever, the graphics. And finally, when you have a consistent process, you run it for a while, it actually supports organizational buy-in. And organizational buy-in is important because there's a lot more than executives who make decisions throughout the company. That said, there are also two types of effective risk reporting. Generically, very different types of effective risk reporting. One is the standard reporting, the one that you issue with a defined frequency, half year, annually, quarterly, whatever. The purpose of this report is to ensure that management is actually updated. Use a highly standardized format. Have a format that management can assess in minutes. If they need 10, it's probably overdone. Be aware that this report is coming out on a quarterly basis. It will not contain the breaking news, because the breaking news doesn't happen just before the quarter comes. It will be generally, and it will be able to direct what are the next steps. We will get back to some of the examples on this one. The other report is more important, actually, and this is where the risk reporting comes in. This is when something actually has happened. There's a change of business conditions, internal circumstances. Could be a war in Ukraine, could be a Brexit, could be a COVID-19, could be a breakdown of some equipment, could be a factory fire, could be anything. Suddenly, the focus changes from the broad and the performance to down to a single risk. This has actually happened. So it becomes an incident reporting more than a risk reporting, because now it's real life. And it's used to direct discussions as, now what? Okay, now the Brits have decided to leave the EU and they don't have an agreement. That's very good. Okay, what does that mean to us? How do we react? If you have any proactive risk management at all, you have, of course, discussed and analyzed and decided on this way before it actually happened. But take the war in Ukraine. I doubt very many people or very many companies were expecting or even considering the fact that Putin could get the option or the notion of going into a sovereign country. So this is a very different kind of ad hoc reporting. This is the breaking news. Now, to get an example of the standard reporting, there will very often be a standard of a status on the risk management. What are you done to the risk management profiles? The assessment process has been doing this or that, and the risk advisory expertise function is being established more than what else we've had, and the agreed risk audit issues are being addressed, and so on and so forth. Management will often be looking for some insights on how is this risk management process progressing. Quite simply, and it's measured up against agreements and action points and like criteria, and it's very often just a verbal set, a page of, we decided to do this, we've done that, we're here, and we are moving in that direction. So they can see that the process is ongoing. Many current reports, as I indicated, actually have this in some kind of shape or form. But remember, it's not about how good you are, how hard you work. It's about how have you complied with or met the action points and agreements made previously with your management team. Then comes the most important one, the risk exposure reporting. And if you look at this chart, this is not about risk exposure. This is about performance. It's entirely dedicated to performance. And here we have a number of different performance criteria. We have a benefit A, could be sales, a benefit B, could be revenue, could be profit. We have some cost structure somewhere. We have a schedule for some implementation plan or whatever. There could be different metrics on these four. They could be very, very different targets. They don't have to be the same thing, but it's different images. And I've even gone to what I would normally not like, red, amber, green, but this is actually working for me. For each metric or each target, we have good performance. This is when you meet or exceed the performance. And if you take benefit A, could be revenue or growth, this is 30% likelihood that you will actually deliver a growth that is on or above what you targeted. You can have decided for that benefit or for that metric, take growth, that a negative growth, a decline, is unacceptable. We simply don't want that. But lo and behold, given the current situation right now, we can report there's a 30% likelihood that you will actually have a negative growth. And in between, we have 40% of amber, which is good, but not satisfactory. This management can address. And they can say, can they accept this 30% chance of having a negative growth? There could be reasons why they could, there could be reasons why they can't. But this is a political discussion. This is a managerial and a board discussion. These are the facts. These are the facts based on how you generated the model. And you can have as many of those as you want. You could take all of your strategic targets, all of your business targets, and put into there with all the different kinds of categories. And management can easily address, benefit B could be profit. We're safe, we're home safe, we're doing quite well on that. Could be some cost structure element that is done better than what we have hoped for and so forth. So there are different elements of what is doing good and what needs more attention. Where do we need to direct our attention in order to help and support that we get good performance on the different criteria that we want to set up and the targets that we've set. Now, management often wants to go a step further down. And here you can take a single target risk reporting. Not a single risk reporting. This is not a risk report. It's a performance report. And here you can come up with different targets. And I've just shown something here where you look at a single target where you can say, okay, we want to have a deep dive. And you can present some kind of an outcome range and say, okay, when we made this plan initially, we had an outcome range coming like the red bars. And with the target, almost to the right, there's a very small chance that we will actually meet it. At this point in time, we've done a lot of risk management, we've done a lot of different things, and several of the risks that we were afraid of never materialized, and by now it's too late, they can't materialize anymore. So at this point in time, we're actually looking into a 70% chance that we will actually meet the target. And this is it. We can also look at what are the key influences. And this is where we leverage the tornado diagram that comes out of a Monte Carlo simulation. Oh, yes. In order to do this, you need to have quantified data. You need to model the whole thing, model your target performance, and you need to Monte Carlo simulate. And here we can say, okay, there's a forecast uncertainty. There's a strategy A that could have a very good positive effect, but it could also have a negative effect. We're actually worried about a hacking attack that can deplete. There's something about commodity pricing. There could be a couple of different risks, uncertainties and things, upsides and downsides that could influence the performance of what you're doing. From here, you can also take out the verbal part. You've been talking to the people involved in making this target. There's probably a task force or some kind of sub-team or a group, a project team that is focused on meeting this particular target, or it could be an operational manager, sales head, or something like that. You can ask for their recommendations, and the recommendations of the people deeply involved in the action taken. What are your recommendations of doing this? And you can also say, there's explicit decisions where you want made in order to improve on this. And you can ask for those. Having this as a standard format is much more effective as coming up with something new again. So define a standard format that your management likes and that you can work with in order to fill it in, because then management will see a page that looks like something they're used to, and they can focus on the content. If you come up with a new design and a new page every time, then you will have to have a new discussion about, okay, what do I see here? What do I read here? What does that mean? What does this mean? That's inefficient. That's a waste of managerial time. And managers are very expensive, so wasting their time is expensive. So you can do this and you can have it addressed. And then we come to the incident reporting, the risk alert reporting, where you move from risk management to actually crisis or incident happening. What is normally fed in there is, okay, what is happening or has happened here? What's the importance to the company on revenue and cost and strategy or whatever? You already know that, because when it was just a risk, you had this analyzed, you had it taken into consideration, you had described the uncertainties, you even modeled it in your performance criteria. You can talk about what is being done, not just what would always have been done, whether experienced or not, but if it has happened, somebody will have done something. What is that? What are our recommendations and how do we follow up our reporting? Define a flexible format, a very flexible but standardized format. The shown data here are known to be quite effective. I've used them in a couple of companies and they have been proven to be very good. Demonstrate the format. You make it up. I mean, when you get started, make it up on something that has happened, something that is happening, or some very tangible and effective dummy occurrence of something. Get your managerial approval and say, okay, this format we understand, accept this. And then beware not to cry wolf too often. It's so easy to demonstrate your importance by coming up and crying wolf over and over and over again every time something small happens. Beware about that, because it depletes more than intensifies what you're doing. And then, of course, be ready to learn and adjust over time, but that comes with pretty much everything. How do we implement this? There's a lot of different stuff in here. How do we implement this effectively? Well, when you're looking at the standard reporting, the first thing you have to do is abolish the traditional reporting. No more risk-centric, qualitative, single-point estimates and the heat maps. I don't even want to say that. Forget it. Get rid of it. Define, together with your management, which targets are you going to monitor? Which targets are you going to do target risk reporting on? And for each of them, model performance. You probably can get help from finance or somebody, strategic development or somebody else. Somebody will have a spreadsheet. Find it, work with it, and include the identified and risk levers, the positive things, the risks, negative things, and the uncertainties, the things that will happen but could go either way. Validate the modeling. You're the specialist. You're the risk manager who wants really to do this well. Make sure that your model is correct, is valid. Down to the nitty-gritty data, probably not. good enough to make valid decisions? Yes, definitely. Make sure it calculates correctly. Clean it up and make it good. Make sure you have ranges on all these things, and then do the Monte Carlo simulation and create the reporting data that you come up with and prepare the report. Have this process going on and get it. You will not get it right the first time. It will not be efficient the second or third time. Once you've done it 5 or 10 times, it will be a standard operating procedure for you, and you will know how to do it. And it can actually go quite fast doing it. Again, in the standard reporting, you're keeping management updated. You're not displaying the big breaking news things. And then, of course, prepare it effectively. Leverage the valid data that you had. Look for, okay, for this target, we're looking for these and those data. If you have an HR target of motivating and satisfaction, look at how many people are leaving the company for which reasons. Look at how many people are promoted. Look at what are the pulse results saying on how they're performing, how happy they are, where are they doing better than others, what are the reasons, and all of those kind of things. Do the validation. Leverage the broad employee and specialist organization know-how you have. There is so many in a large company. They're huge groups of specialists who really, really know what they're doing. They have a lot of detailed know-how. Leverage it. This is new insights to management. Leverage it, and they will be happy to bring it forward because very often they have been talking about it without being able to get attention. Now you can help them. Leverage tailored tools and templates. Again, don't reinvent the wheel, and get the support from the organization. Now you have it implemented, and now you're doing well. But if you look into the COSO 31,000 standard, you see that one of the principles is that risk management is integrated. It's embedded in the company. So once you have implemented the effective risk reporting, eliminate it. I'm not kidding. I mean it. Seriously, eliminate it. Integrate your standard risk reporting seamlessly in the company performance reporting that you're doing anyway. Do not have a special risk performance reporting every quarter when you're doing a financial or another performance reporting every quarter. Embed it in, put it in there. Just 1 or 2 pages, or whatever is needed, put it in there so it becomes part of it. This helps you drive a culture where levers, uncertainties, and risk becomes a natural part of discussing performance. And that's what you want. You want it integrated. You want it embedded in the company. And then gradually, as you do this, transform your risk management function to a risk advisory function. In the risk management function, people outside, people looking at you, I'm a risk manager, people would expect that you actually manage risks. A good risk manager does not manage risk. Line management manages risks. Business management manages risks. They're the ones who are taking, it's just like finance. A finance manager doesn't manage finance. He tells leaders how they're doing on finance, and then line management, business management makes the decisions that actually spends or what makes money. So it's parallel to that one. So it's more like an advisory function. If you start calling it a risk advisory function, you get a lot of leverage on what you're actually doing, what your actually purpose, what your actually actual value to the company. It's advising, it's not management. When I was a risk management manager at the Lego Group, I said I had the greatest job in the company. I was responsible for managing risks, and I was not managing any one of them. I had people to do that for me, the CEO for one. And yes, he was the owner of a couple of risks that were in charge of managing. I wasn't, because if I was, I had to be able to decide on something that he definitely believed was his decision. And then start pushing for discussing intelligent risk taking when you're looking at the levers and uncertainties as well as the risks. It's about optimizing performance, and suddenly deliberate, intelligent risk taking becomes a valid part of the agenda. Risk is no longer something that has to be avoided at all costs. So push for that and make your company better. But be also prepared that on the risk reporting, the key alert or risk alert report will probably remain necessary. And then what Alex Sidorenko calls risk management 1, some traditional risk functions like insurance, like treasury, like health and safety, a couple of others, be prepared to keep them as it is. These are not risk management functions. These are just handling issues throughout the company for business process specialties. So this is the way that you can, there will be a little left, but the overall risk reporting, there will be no risk reporting. There will be a performance reporting that is risk-based. When we're talking about this, well, who am I to talk about this? Well, I'm Danish. I'm 66. I have 4 children, 4 grandchildren. I have an MSc in electrical power engineering, which is more than 40 years old, and I've never used it for anything. I've never worked with electricity, but I worked with the Lego Group for 35 years, 10 of which I was the head of strategic risk management, where I was the winner of 3 international awards. I've written 2 books and I don't know how many articles. I've done several keynote and topic speaks at conferences. And then after the Lego Group, I started Risk Advisory, the Actus company, in April 27. Actus is the merge of the 2 Danish words for active uncertainty, based on the philosophy that risk is here to stay. You may as well learn to leverage it as a benefit. Now I have a special treat for you. I'll go to the war in Ukraine. Because to me, the war in Ukraine is a case of very, very poor political risk management on behalf of President Putin, of course. It's born by the political ambitions of one man. Putin wanted Russia to be a superpower. Putin wants to be reckoned with and called with and seen as a world leader. And it's based on his perception of an overwhelming force and strength of the Russian armed forces and the weakness of Western responses to a special operation, as he calls an invasion of Ukraine, a sovereign nation. I'm not sure that he thought the West couldn't respond. I'm sure he knew NATO could respond. I'm quite certain he was dead sure they wouldn't. NATO is comprised by a lot of countries. EU is comprised by 27 countries, and they are generally known not to agree on very much, and it takes forever for them to make a stand and do something. So basically, I believe he was very strong on the opinion that he could do it and he can get away with it and nobody would bother him. Now, what has happened? Well, first of all, we have seen a very strong unity between NATO and EU countries. He simply stepped the line. This is overstepping the line. This is not okay, and we are fully in agreement with that. We will help Ukraine, coming with weapons and systems and support and whatever we can. It has also meant that several European countries, Denmark, Germany, and others, NATO countries, have decided to increase their defense spending to 2% of GDP. This is funny because they were not inclined to do so before. An American president since the days of Ronald Reagan has asked for it. Trump demanded it. We will not defend Europe if they don't increase and so forth. And nobody did it. They never got the money. Now they're going to get the money. Now they will extend their defense spending. Finland and Sweden are currently not members of NATO. They are both neighbors of Russia. They have border lines with Russia. And they are now preparing to join in. And they will most likely be welcomed to NATO. Previously, they would still be welcomed if they asked, but there was no inclination from Sweden, no inclination from Finland that they would actually ever want to be a part of NATO, because that would just be rattling a cage they didn't want to rattle. And it has also created a stronger inclination among EU countries to accept Ukraine as an EU member state. If you look at the criteria the EU operates with in order to become a member state, Ukraine is 100 miles away. They're not going to get it. But based on this, they actually have a sporting chance. So what he's created is actually something quite different. It has also not made Russia the political strength and the superpower that he wants to have and be reckoned with and be part of this and that and everything. It has made Russia a political pariah. Nobody wants to talk to them. Now the G20 is going to assemble, or they have assembled when this is running. Nobody wants to talk to the Russians. They're not part of the World Cup. They're not part of this. They're not part of that. They're not playing in Wimbledon. Russian sports people are taken out. Russian cultural elements are taken out. They simply become pariah everywhere in the world. Nobody wants to work with them, despite the fact that Russian people is largely innocent. This is Putin's doing. It's not the Russian people's doing. It's not the Russian people asking Putin to do something. And finally, on a green agenda, it has actually made a very hard push in the European Union to move towards a faster implementation of a green agenda. Nord Stream 2, which was going to be a gas pipeline coming through the Baltic Seas and to Russia, from Russia to the Baltic Seas, and support Germany and Belgium and so forth with gas, would probably never be in operation. It's $1 billion investment, but now, given the situation, no. And at that point in time, is it likely that the Germans will approve of it now and admit that they will be more depending on Russian gas? Probably not. So this will reduce the Russian economy. It would make $1 billion lost investment, and it will turn Europe to a greener agenda. Looking at what has already happened, If I didn't care about Ukraine as a sovereign nation, if I didn't care about the deaths amongst Ukrainian people and the war atrocities that has been done, I would actually be inclined to say, thank you, Putin, because you have achieved a lot of things that nobody else has been able to do. These were just, I am dead certain, not your objectives. So to me, this is a case of very poor political risk management. Let not be your company that does something like it. So thank you. I hope this is value. And to the extent it's value, do donate. Do donate to the charities that helps Ukrainian refugees, helps the country in Ukraine to overcome this, because it is absolutely an atrocity what's going on, and we need it to stop. Thank you.